Welcome in to this week's episode on riverzflo podcast. I'm your host, River, and last week we touched on alcoholic warning signs. Some of the things that led up to me finally reaching out for help. I'm still struggling with my voice. I have my appointment this week with the ENT doctors. It's 45 minutes. I don't know what kind of tests they do, but I will surely be back with an update in our next week's space. So I promised last week that I was going to pivot a little bit. And instead of focusing on my backstory this week, I want to start opening up conversations around mental health and its connection to my recovery from alcohol use. This week's piece, please be reminded you do not need to listen or watch. You can always read the accompanying piece that I post every week at the same time within the podcast posts on Substack. So it gives people some options. Watch, listen, or read while you listen. Let's get settled in. Step 11 impacts neurodivergence and mental wellness. Get comfortable. Let's get into it. Emotions and the mind are two areas that were left out of my childhood. This is nothing special. Most of us experienced this kind of dynamic. We were never taught that the mind is like any other part of the body. It is a piece of us that requires nourishment. And without care, wellness easily becomes illness. Mental health is something we all have. Mental wellness is something to achieve, to work towards, to maintain. And too easily, we can find ourselves on the side of illness if we aren't paying attention. But what does it take for us to start noticing? I knew of several relatives with declining mental health and others with things like depression and even schizophrenia in my family. But how they got there was never a topic of discussion. Neither was how to move from states like that into wellness. And like most people, it never occurred to me that I might be susceptible to mental illness. Not until it started happening to me. There were times I felt like I was out of my mind. Times when I was scared of what I might do. Times when I couldn't identify which version of me was present. Times when I felt out of my body, just watching the misery. Times where rage filled the rooms with echoes of my screams. Times that I felt like I could take on the world with passion so great it could build castles. Times where I thought my heart would just explode in love and in joy. Times where I felt invincible and invisible all at the same time. The last 10 years of my drinking have been full of paradox in mental health. Ups and downs, highs and lows, dead and alive, thriving and crumbling, driven and defeated. I'm sure many of us can identify with some of those feelings. But what has changed? Awareness and coping strategies. Most of that time, mental unrest was okay because I didn't think there was a problem. It wasn't until the last 6 years that I began questioning my mental health. And it got really interesting because I never spoke to any mental health professionals or anyone else about these things. Not until after I stopped drinking. At one point, I thought I had multiple personality disorder. I couldn't predict my moods. I even went as far as naming the archetypes. And I have some of those for you today. There was Sheldon, the know-it-all, There was Tasha, one of my favorites. The I'll cut you bitch. There was Guadalupe. She is closest to who I am today. Barefoot in the kitchen. And there was me, confused and questioning. Then I thought maybe I was bipolar. Mainly because of the abrupt switches in emotional climate. I realized there was something going on that I could not name. And it was not all to blame on the alcohol. And all I knew then was that alcohol helped some of what was going on, but simultaneously created other undesirable side effects. And COVID gave me the time I needed to fully realize my relationship with alcohol. It also renewed my relationship with social media. And I guess that's where a lot of my story and thinking about my story and sharing pieces of it and retelling it and reshaping started. I discovered so much information that led me down the mental health rabbit hole. And I discovered neurodivergence and all that can fall under this umbrella. I was intrigued and saw so much of me in the voices sharing their stories. Near the end of 2022, I found myself at a 12-step meeting with a desire to stop drinking. Part of me knew in order to gain clarity on my mental health, I needed to stop the obsession with alcohol. A couple months passed, and I began to have a clear mind. With the help I was receiving and a therapist, my walk toward mental wellness really began to take off. We did a lot of digging, and by the end of our year or so together, we suspected Asperger's, which now falls under autism. Speaking out loud and reading these pieces, it takes a lot with the voice issues that I'm having, and I get dizzy from the amount of breath and push that it takes to get the words out. And so I rely heavily on editing because I take a lot of pauses to breathe and to get my head balanced again. I waited almost a year to find another therapist after mine had moved on. Part of me was satisfied with where I was mentally. Another part of me missed the validation I found in therapy. It took a couple months, but I found another therapist who just happened to be a neurodivergent, affirming person with her own diagnosis of ADHD. By this time, I was paying more attention to other neurodivergent voices. The autism explained many parts of my reality, but there was still too much unaccounted for. And I ignored ADHD for a while because there's just so much information to get a handle on. When I started paying attention to ADHD stories, I found more missing pieces. And to go even further, when I found ADHD, a pretty clear picture of myself began to take form. And today, I appreciate the paradox and understand the ins and outs differently about why I drank and why I am susceptible to addictive coping behaviors. So, how does step 11 work with my neurodivergence? In this recovery series, I think the next parts are going to discuss different steps and how they fold into my everyday practices and the structures I have built in my recovery. The 12 steps are designed for living. They can help in many areas of our lives, separate from substance use and addictions. I found this particularly true when I started looking for solutions with my ADHD traits. About a year into my recovery from alcohol, I noticed I had lost the desire to drink. This was not surprising to me. I was surprised when I started looking into myself more deeply. Why I do the things I do, and why I think the way I do. The things I learned about alcoholism didn't explain enough for me. But therapy was pointing more and more towards my neurotype. a lot of people I see in recovery circles and 12-step meetings are happy just to not drink anymore. That type is not me. I was not satisfied with just not drinking. I wanted more out of the process because I was meeting myself for the first time. But every day was different, confusing, uncomfortable, and constantly changing. When we drink, not a lot changes internally. Emotionally, it is a lot of sameness. And when we stop drinking, our brain starts to heal and begins to play what I like to call catch up. It starts regrowing, expanding, and unlearning to relearn. It felt destabilizing, new, shaky. As time passed, the more of myself I became, but the less I understood about where I was coming from. And at some point, step 11 became a pillar for my everyday practices. Step 11 says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with quote-unquote God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. This step targets something deeper than behavior change. It reshapes the inner conditions that make living with a dependency on alcohol possible. It also relieves some pressure on an ADHD system like mine. Now, let's see how. It builds a daily regulating practice. My ADHD brain thrives with predictable anchors that regulate the nervous system. Step 11 instills the ritual of daily spiritual practice, which contributes to more regulation. And more regulation means fewer impulsive, compulsive, or avoidance-driven behaviors. These are more frequent than ADHDers care to admit. Even just 5 to 10 minutes of prayer, meditation, or quiet reflection, and the nervous system gets a daily sensory, emotional reset. That is a powerful tool in reducing overwhelm. this becomes a stabilizing rhythm, something I often struggle to create without external structure. It strengthens conscious awareness instead of autopilot. It is about improving our conscious contact with something larger than the reactive mind. My ADHD impulsivity often comes from acting before noticing. Conscious contact means micro pauses that interrupt my automatic reactions. Meditation trains introspection. In practice, this means noticing things like urges, emotional spikes, noticing the stories the mind tells us, noticing the sensory cues before they escalate, and pausing before acting. This pause is one of the most protective factors in my recovery and in managing my ADHD traits, consequently reducing impulsive coping behaviors. Step 11 gives us a non-self source of guidance. It is a higher power, a symbol of enlightened good or anything greater than ourselves. This matters because my addictions and my neurodivergence often thrive in isolation, shame, self-blame, internalized failure narratives, and self-reliance that has collapsed. Having a higher power reframes guidance as support. So I am doing less self-criticism. It reduces the pressure of self-reliance that ADHDers often overuse until burnouts, shutdowns, and meltdowns. This step gives us a way to ask for help, feel accompanied, and feel accountable to something beyond our struggles. And even the higher power is simply inner wisdom, nature, community, or future self. Creating emotional spaciousness and a sense of not doing it alone is critical. Step 11, it trains two complementary skills. Prayer is expressing. Meditation is receiving. Prayer becomes an open conversation where we learn to articulate how we feel, question decisions, seek guidance, and give thanks. This is emotional processing. My ADHD emotional processing can be intense, fast, and non-linear. Prayer gives a structured outlet for my emotional overflow. Meditation teaches me to sit with silence, focus on breath, and opens me up to an internal compass. It gives a structured container for balancing the system. This reduces the noise of the world in our minds and on our nervous systems. This is emotional regulation. Together, prayer and meditation create a cycle of express, regulate, integrate. This is ideal for us. Step 11 reconnects people with meaning. Everyone has a mind, body, spirit pathway that contributes to wellness or illness. With an ADHD system, we often feel disconnected from purpose, right? From purpose. During burnout or addiction, meaning making is a powerful motivator for our brains, more effective than discipline or willpower. This step works because it reactivates that pathway. The part of us that wants to be whole, grounded, connected. It reconnects us with values, intuition, and internal alignment. This all supports long-term regulation. ADHD makes me susceptible to addictive behaviors in order to cope. This narrows my scope of life. Step 11 widens it again. Meaning is a stabilizer. This step is stabilizing. Step 11 creates consistency. Recovery and my neurodivergence depends on consistency. Step 11 is daily, not occasionally, not only when things get bad. It is preventative maintenance on the system. My ADHD creates struggle with executive function, routine, and consistency. A daily ritual becomes a keystone habit. One small action that makes other actions easier. It reduces decision fatigue because the ritual is the same every day. And my brain doesn't need to negotiate with itself. This repetition builds stability, predictability, self-trust, and a sense of rhythm. And rhythm is one of the most healing forces for any dysregulated system. Consistency becomes embodied rather than forced. Step 11 gives us a place to put discomfort. Spiritual practices may feel uncomfortable, conflicting, or even embarrassing. But that discomfort is actually part of why it works. ADHD brings up rejection sensitivity, masking fatigue, and emotional intensity. This step creates a private, shame-free space to process discomfort, practice vulnerability, practice honesty, and practice surrender. It teaches tolerating small amounts of emotional friction. All these muscles are weakened in untreated alcoholism and neurodivergence. These practices strengthen those muscles and creates a safe container for the parts that feel like too much. Now, before recovery, I wandered, feeling lost. But today, I can wander, trusting in the faith that I am guided, protected, and cared for. My daily practices shift and evolve every day. But I am intuitively guided by a force greater than I know through every process. I don't always know where I'm going, but prayer and meditation are always leading the way. Please feel free to support the channel. This is a peer-supported space. Share this message with anyone who might be able to gain or benefit from this content. Next week, I think we'll be looking at how step 3 can assist in neurodivergent overwhelm. May our hearts be open and our souls free. I'm River. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day.